VSW podcast. Today we got a very special guest with us, the one and only Daria, the picture chick. Welcome to the show.
Hi, nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
I always like to, get not just wrestlers, but just everybody that's in the scene. Whether it's fans, photographers, whatever it might be. It all plays an important role in a show. Makes it that complete package.
Well, thank you. I look forward to this. And yes, I've pretty much done a little of everything in wrestling. So,
So, I take it you started as a fan. When were you a fan since like when you were little? Is that something you wanted to like pursue?
oh, I've been a fan for well over 30 years now. I went to my very first wrestling event when I want to say 10 years old. It was in April 1986. It was at my accent's going to come out. It was at the Boston Garden. And I was introduced to such stars such as the British Bulldogs, the Haitian Kid, the Junkyard Dog, Bruce the Barber Beefcake. Well, he wasn't the barber at the time. Greg Valentine, Jimmy Hart, all those guys. And I just fell in love with it. And it's been a passion of mine ever since I was a kid. And I did promise myself that one day I would get into wrestling one way or another.
A wonderful time, to become a fan. I feel like anybody that watched wrestling during that time kind of just got sucked in because everybody was a larger than life character. I mean, you just named a bunch of them, but I mean, there was also people that were like, that got me like at that time was like George the Animal Steel, King Kong Bundy, Haystacks Kowloon. And the thing about it is these guys, you look at them, they look like wrestlers. You wouldn't look at him and say, hey, he might be working at the store, he might, down the street, or he might sell cars for them. Like you by looking at him, he's like, this guy can only wrestle. They did a very good job doing that in that era.
Well, my all-time favorite has always has and always will be and I hate using it in the past tense, the late Ultimate Warrior. He was the guy who really clinched it for me. Me being always an oddball character, I always kind of draw myself to the oddball characters, and he was just a character. He was the very first time I ever saw him on TV, he was like this larger than life, just this wild character with these intense promos, and I was hooked to like that.
Yeah, I mean, he was one of those guys. I mean, I was a fan of the Ultimate Warrior as well, and he was just one of those guys that he would because I mean back then they did a lot of like pre and post interviews, which was really cool. So those pre interviews would really hype you up for the match, depending on who was saying them. And his was just sometimes just raving and ranting or just pacing back and forth, and you would just like the anticipation for this match, and then entrance would hit, and you would just race, take off. Some of my favorite matches in feud was probably him versus Rick Rude. We had a great chemistry those two, and they went back and forth. They did things with the tights, the trunks, and then it was even great like to see, like I said, he would get that world title around his waist. When he beat Hogan, which was a shock to me. I didn't honestly know which. At that time, being a kid, I figured they were going to go with Hogan.
Not me. I knew it was going to be Warrior from the beginning, but believe it or not, that's not my favorite Warrior WrestleMania match. My favorite Warrior WrestleMania match is him versus Macho Man a year later, WrestleMania 7.
Yes, that is memorable. And those two were even, I think those two had even better chemistry than him and Hogan. Because their match was just, they were just, Hogan and him, they were these two powers, like, right, superpowers. But Macho Man was a different character altogether. He wasn't really, a ranting and raving kind of guy. His promos were totally, on point, but they were different, and his character was different. So when him and Warrior went together, it was really like, like a king and a savage at times. Because Warrior was just this animalistic creature, and Randy was coming out all sophisticated, and they did the whole storyline with Sherry and everybody, and it was good. It was good wrestling. I still to this day will say my favorite WrestleManias are probably 1 through 15. I can't get past the olden days of wrestling as far as WWE goes. There's great stuff out there, and there's great stuff that happened since then, of course. But those early memories, like I said, just sucked me in. It got me into the figure game. It got me into cards, and just grew from there.
Yeah, same. For almost half my life, I used to collect WWE magazines. Well, it was WWF, then turned into WWE. I had like two huge bins of magazines. I sold them, but yeah, I had like so many. You could go back and you could just see the progression from WWF to WWE to what it is today. I pretty much have watched almost every era of pro wrestling there has been ever since I was a kid, and I read everything about it. I read the dirt sheets. I would watch all the programming, and I just knew that this was for me. I just knew that this was the world I needed to be in.
No, most definitely. And you kind of get that way, when you feel that, the passion for something like that, and it brings out the best of you, it brings out creative thoughts and ideas and all of this. So at some point, I take it you started to, branch out, check out local scenes, and check out what was out there on that level.
Yeah, I knew that there was local wrestling, and I saw one time I went to a show that was in one of my neighborhoods at a building I worked at, lived near. It was at a community center, and that was the first time I saw. I want to say they both of them were there, but I don't know if one or the other were there. Local superstars Danger Boy, Alfredo, and Wolverine,
Okay.
and that was the first time I saw them there, I believe. Um, but I didn't get into local wrestling until years later when I started living on my own. And then I started seeing like flyers and hearing advertisements. And I would go to some of these shows. And then I started talking with some of the local stars. And then I got involved with a local wrestler named Angel the Icon, who
Yep.
I had seen him at WWE shows before, but that's a whole separate story. And he said that he was doing a wrestling show at a Quiznos in Warwick. Would I be interested in coming? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I got there early and I had my camera with me. And he goes, and I'm at the show and he goes, would you mind taking pictures of the show? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So I was at ringside and I took pictures of all the different wrestlers that were there and all the different actions. And then he was like, okay, well, I'm going to be doing more shows in October. Do you think maybe you could come and start taking pictures for us? And I said, sure. So that's where my nickname came in, Daria the Picture Chick, because that's exactly what I was. I would take pictures of the wrestlers. I would do like still photos and then I also do action photos. And I'd had them all up on the going back the years MySpace. I'd put them all up on there and I do little edits for people. And I got to know a lot of really great superstars in the making. Some are still in the local scene today, some of which gone on to the big time. And so yeah, it's been a bit of a progression in wrestling how I got involved.
Yeah, I mean, but that's awesome though to kind of just get that. I mean, and I can just imagine, being as passionate as you were about wrestling and getting that opportunity. It's like, oh, for sure, I'm going to take it. Yes, I'll take photos all day. That gets you a little bit closer to the act and it gets you into that kind of that door. And Angel's a great guy. I've known him for a couple of years now. I've worked with him a little bit on a couple of shows, did some stuff in Woonsocket as well, and he's another passionate one about this, the industry. And I have to say, he's one of like I've seen him, because you mentioned Wolverine and them, and they were at the last show too. And I have to say, like, he's one hell of a collector himself, Angel. Like for wrestling stuff, he outdoes even myself. Like I've seen him like just running around, getting autographs, doing whatever he has to do to get merch and stuff signed. It's pretty wild, but he does it. I saw him at an AEW show once, and I was just mesmerized because we were all waiting outside, and the wrestlers come out the gates, and I see somebody like it's dark out, so it vaguely looked familiar. And then I get close, and I'm like, oh hey, what's up, man? We're talking a little bit. He's got like a tote, a whole tote of stuff, and he's just running back and forth, superstars getting stuff signed. Like I said, I was impressed because, besides the wrestling aspect of, wrestling, I am a big collector. I do still collect stuff. Sometimes I still buy magazines if I can find like certain issues that I, remember or I went to the show at. I'll go on eBay and buy them. In 2020, I did a lot of collecting of, retro wrestling, WWF stuff, and even some, ring worn stuff, local ring worn stuff. I do like collecting, the collecting aspect too of it all. And even on the indie scene, I collect T-shirts. I love the merch, that people bring in. Their creativity, seen it on, shirts and stuff. It's like that's cool, and I'll support that all day. So you're doing this for a while, and obviously it was going good. But so at some point, did you want to like get further even into the business, or how did that all? How did you like
Well,
just kind
like
of?
I said, I got into the wrestling pretty early as a kid. And of course, anyone who got early in wrestling grew up with the commentary of Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan, the best. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a voice in wrestling in such a way where, I mean, Bobby Heenan, come on, the fine art
Yeah,
of
no,
sarcasm.
I agree.
Just
Very similar. I was a big person in wrestling with the commentary. That's what actually kind of lured me in was the color commentary because I mean we would get the VHS tapes, right, and is that we had a local video store, so I would go and rent them, and there would be times where at the time I really liked whatever I would rent, whether it be a WrestleMania or SummerSlam, whatever pay per view. But I didn't have two VCRs. I didn't have capability to copy the video. But what I did have the capability to do was copy the voice and copy all like just the audio with my tape player. So I would basically just tape a whole show and then listen to it. And all I could listen to was obviously the commentary, the intro music. But I used to just listen to it at night because it would be a way to watch the show without watching the show. And that was kind of originally my thing too. Is that I always wanted to be kind of a commentator or do something where that you vocalize. I'm not a big statured person. I wasn't made for the ring, but for other things, yes. And it's just great seeing people that do give tribute to these guys and girls on commentary. So I feel like for the last however long everybody talks Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler and all these other guys, and they're fine. But what we had even Jesse Ventura on the mic was classic color commentary.
Well, that color commentary is always popular when it winds up in a movie. If you've ever saw the movie Repossessed, they had color commentary for The Exorcism. They had Mean Gene Okerlund and Jesse Ventura. So it was like something like that is what I wanted to do. So I talked about it with the group I was with, Show Pro, and they were like, okay, well, we can train you to do that kind of stuff. But somehow it got roped into, instead of me becoming like a commentator or a manager, it got roped into me becoming a wrestler.
What?
So
Wow.
so I said, okay, I'll learn. And I did learn how to wrestle. I learned the bumps. I learned the ropes. I learned slams. I was told I had a pretty decent drop kick, and I was also told I could do a pretty good choke slam. So so they decided for me to become a wrestler. But I would be lying if I said I enjoyed the character I had, because honestly, I really was not a fan of the character I got roped with. I was pretty much told I was going to be a female version of Umaga. So
Uh,
I sometimes wonder if he did that because of the fact that I'm a big girl. So I just but I went with it, and it actually wound up giving me a championship. I am the first and only women's wrestling champion to come out of Show Pro. I
nice.
was the first and only champion to be crowned, and the company folded like a year after that. So I am the only women's champion in that group.
Still undefeated at that, huh?
Yeah, pretty much.
But
But
that's wild though.
yeah.
You sign up for one thing, and then the next thing now you're in the ring with these people, and you're going off the ropes, and it is, it's a lot different than what you see.
Yeah, but
Like I said,
I don't regret it.
no, you don't. And like I said, while the ring wasn't for me, because of my size, and that was the thing when I tried to get into wrestling to train, there was no market for my size demo. There was nothing there. Everybody wanted over 6 feet. They wanted 250. They wanted big people. And a 5'8", 140-pound kid, they were like, no, no need. Don't even bother. And so I did get turned away. I went into boxing for a while. But wrestling changed over the years. The big man kind of shrunk down, and now it's more inclusive. There's more than almost anybody can jump in the ring if you know what you're doing. You can make it work.
Yeah, I think
Anything.
that's what it is too, because I was also in wrestling during the time where the WWE Diva was like the standard of what a woman wrestler should look like. Not taking anything away from their talents or anything, but that wasn't, I mean, it was like the mid early 2000s when I started wrestling. So yeah, we had like Kelly and we had Eve, we had Layla, we had Maurice, we had women like that. So someone like me wouldn't exactly, you know, be considered a diva. So, but now, like you said, nowadays it's more inclusive. There are more body types in wrestling that are beautiful women, but they're not size zeros. They're either big, they're buff,
You
or
can be
they're
muscular.
curvy, and they're just
Exactly. And
wonderful.
it lets more people kind of get involved. And like I said, I've done, since then I've done a few trainings and I went to some seminars, and it's not a forgiving experience. Like, the ropes, people think it's an easy experience to run off, and it's not like what you see. It's not a slingshot. If you're not careful, you're gonna, rip your side apart, but you can also go right over if you're not careful. There's a lot of things in it that wrestlers do automatically that if you don't do, you're gonna get hurt somehow, some way down the line. And it's really interesting for me to learn all those little things, just because being a fan of wrestling was getting to see that other side. Um, I did one in New England Pro Wrestling Academy. That was a great, fun experience. A lot of great talent in there. Just working with us, showing us, the bumps, and showing us how to, run the ropes, jump up, jump off, get over, get out, get in, different things, and it does inspire you to kind of want to get into it. If I had, I think, more time that I could just dedicate to say, hey, I can train, 3 days a week for this amount of time, I probably would give it a run. But the fact of the matter is, unfortunately, I don't have that time for the training, and to not do the training portion of it would just be, it would just be robbing myself. You're not going to get far without, proper training and the dedication, the time dedicated that you need to kind of learn. But yeah, that's tremendous that you were able to get in there, and capture championship. That's always fun. Being a champion. And so after they folded, did you continue wrestling? Did you start taking bookings elsewhere, or did you just say, okay, we're done?
No, I won't go into too many details, but I think certain people that I hung out with kind of ruined my credentials. So I just kind of stepped aside, and I decided that I still wanted to be involved in wrestling, but I knew that maybe wrestling actively wasn't for me. So this was around the time where podcasting was starting to become popular. People were starting to like put on shows on the computer and stuff like that. So I was like, why don't I give that a try? Why don't I make my own little show so that way I can voice what I want to do in wrestling? Kind of like going back to being a commentator and wanting to talk about wrestling. So in June of 2011, I decided to start my own podcast called the Squared Circle Cafe. I don't know why that name had always been in my head for years, because I always had this like little image of like opening up a restaurant wrestling related, and I would call it the Squared Circle Cafe, and everything would be wrestling related, But I just knew that this was going to be something I wanted to do. So two of my friends decided to join me. I had two friends I met through the Matt Hardy message board, showing my age again, message boards.
Right, that's how the
And
internet was. People don't know these things, but that's how it was. Message boards and stuff. There was no messenger. There was message boards and your forums, and but that's how you met decent people too back then. And good way
yeah,
to
so
network.
we decided to put this podcast together, and what started out as a 15-minute show turned into a 2-hour broadcast every couple of weeks, and we would talk about all kinds of wrestling related topics at the time. And then after a year of doing it, I decided, well, why don't we start maybe seeing if we could interview some wrestlers? And the very first guest we had on was former ECW star Shelly Martinez. She was
Nice.
Ariel in ECW, the WWE version, and then she was also in TNA as Salinas, and made her name on the independent scene. So I asked her to be my very first guest, and that kind of snowballed into us having all these interviews with a lot of wrestlers who have gone on to the big time. Some of the wrestlers I can name off the top of my head are Adam Cole, Matt Taven, Mike Bennett, um, Biff Busick, who went on to become Oni Lorcan in WWE, Cedric Alexander, Caprice Coleman, um, Vinny Marcellia. He's now Vincent in ROH, part of the Righteous. Um, we had all kinds of. We had also had former WWE stars. We had Brian Clark. You know him as Adam Bomb. We've had uh oh god, what was his name? He was on ECW. Unfortunately, he recently passed away. Axel Rotten.
Oh yeah.
Um, So yeah, and it just became all these like great interviews we were having with all these awesome people. And we did this show for 5 years. We met together many times, and a fourth person joined the group, my friend Beth. She's also into wrestling as well. She used to come with us to a lot of shows. And one year, all four of us were at an XWA show. Oh no, RWA, sorry, um, in Providence, and we were told that JT Dunn's opponent, AJ Styles, was injured, so he wasn't able to wrestle. So they called in a last minute replacement, and that person turned out to be Matt Hardy, the man who brought us all together. So there's this
Wow.
really awesome picture we have of the four of us with Matt Hardy, the man who brought us all together. And even bonus points, he knew each and every one of us from his message board.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Yep.
Talk about full
Well, I met
circle.
Matt Hardy previous times before, so Matt already knew me. We kind of had this little friendship, not a friendship in which I can pick up the phone and call and talk to him, but it's like every time he's in town, he sees me and he's like, Daria, hey, and he always gives me a big hug. I think I've gotten a hug from almost every single one of his iterations.
That's awesome. He's such a great superstar too. Again, someone that when I would get later into wrestling, they had that attitude every time. It was almost a resurgence in wrestling because for me wrestling I've taken many breaks. I watched it obviously during those 80s 90s times. I took some time off in like 95 96. It got a little bit wonky and I just kind of backed out. Then 97 came in and I was just like back into it again. Then I got out again in 2002ish 3ish when everybody combined to one promotion. I just got really discouraged and disappointed. um Not that I wanted one company to win over the next. I just enjoy multiple companies. Like I personally would have, if I was Vince, I would have bought it fine, but I wouldn't have told anybody. I would have left everybody running against each other and let everybody still think that there was a war going on and just let everybody, enjoy the different brands because they were different. WCW was a more technical style. It wasn't as, you know, didn't have all the glamour, but it had really good wrestling. WWE had a lot more glamour. Some of the guys, weren't the best wrestlers. They were just good for, amping the crowd and a few moves and then a finisher. They all had their different styles. And ECW even brought its own style, and that's one of the styles that probably really, influenced almost everybody I know, was ECW. In some extent, it brought in, I think it really kind of, at that point, it broke the gap between indie wrestling and mainstream wrestling, because if you haven't been out there, it was almost like an indie show at the time. But it was a mainstream, promotion, ECW. But it started very small, and I think at that point it kind of bridged the gap. But yeah, those guys, and that era again, like I said, even today, the Hardys are still dominant in wrestling.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, wrestling to me, I think I don't know why everyone keeps comparing, especially nowadays. People are always like, oh, this is better than this is better. You are allowed to have more than one favorite. I try to watch all kinds of wrestling, from WWE, AEW, TNA, ROH, local. You are allowed to love all forms of wrestling. I mean, there are some wrestlings I don't enjoy. Like, personally, I'm not into deathmatch wrestling. I find that very uncomfortable. I just kind of get a little weirded out when I see someone get hit with a light tube, so
Yeah.
so
No,
nothing
I
against
get
that.
it.
I give them the biggest props for doing that kind of stuff. Don't get me wrong. I give them much respect. I just personally can't sit and watch it. I know I'm watching
Yeah,
it. I'm
no,
wearing the
I
God
get
shirt. Someone who destroys things for a living, and I can't watch a death match. So, um, but yeah, I think you're allowed to have more than one favorite. You're allowed to love wrestling for what it is. It's fun, it's entertaining. It shouldn't be taken so seriously sometimes. And there are just people out there who just take it a little too seriously. And it's like, we're just here to enjoy for a couple of hours a break from reality and just watch some really awesome action. It's funny, it's entertaining, it can make you cry, it can make you laugh. It's just pro wrestling is just great.
And that is what it is. At least for me myself, it's that escape. You go to a show and you just you step out of your world for 2 to 3 hours. And you step into theirs. Whatever's going on there, that's the universe. Whoever's champion, whoever's running riot, whatever it is. And it is a nice break, and you get to see friends. You get to see all these people. You get to see wrestlers. Because that's the cool thing I think about the indie scene is that go to a couple of shows in a row, and you intermission roll, you see the wrestlers, they come out. It's not like a Monday Night Raw where you're sitting miles away. These guys and girls will come out and you can talk to them, you can ask them questions, you can get pictures, you can buy stuff, and you go to a couple of shows, they start to know you, and then you start conversing with them during shows, and you start meeting new friends, and it's a great place to just meet like-minded folks, and you don't need that drama. I find the drama and as far as the fan base on the indie scene, far less toxic and volatile than it is like with WWE and AEW, because they're always bickering. Everybody's bickering online about this should be this way and this should be that way. People on the indie scene, there's like, that was a good match. And they don't get into they should trying to rewrite the script, so to say.
Yeah, independent wrestling nowadays, it's even hotter now than it was 10 years ago. I mean, it's like some of the bigger names who are no longer in the bigger companies are sometimes making better business on the independent scene than they were when they were back in the big companies. And it's just because it's just amazing. You've got a lot of homegrown talent making names for themselves, making big moves in wrestling. And you just know it's only a matter of time before they're signed to a big company. And then you get to say, I knew them when. I use Vincent as an example because I remember him, Vinny Marcellia, in the independent scene and how he blossomed to become a member of ROH. He became a member of the Kingdom, one of the 6-man tag team champions. And now he's in ROH AEW as the Righteous. And it just amazes me just how much I've seen him grow from back in the day. And I get so proud. And there are like so many guys right now that I've watched for years on the independent scene, and I can never get tired of watching them wrestle. They are just so fun. Some of them I call friends, and I just am so proud of how happy they are doing what they love doing. And independent wrestling is one of the best things out there. I highly recommend, please don't sleep on it. If there is a show in your area, go watch it because you never know who you're going to meet and what's going to happen. And that was every independent show I've gone to. Something always happens wherever I'm at. So you never know.
And it's the truth. And right now, I feel like the indie scene, at least in this, Northeast area, it's a very fast moving scene. The guys and girls are moving on quickly. They are getting themselves out there. They're not afraid to just, for back in the day, wrestlers were okay with just, working just a local. Now people, they're anxious and eager to travel. They want to get out there. They will go to other countries. They will go to other, states, wherever they want to go. You got Channing Thomas going to Germany. You got Rip Bison and Japan. You got people coming back and forth with all sorts of wrestling knowledge. And these are the guys and girls that you will probably see signed within the next year. I mean, another good case I think of someone, of great progression, you probably know her is Becca. She started off basic Becca, with this 80s kind of, I would say like, it was, I don't know, like, like a fitness instructor kind of a gimmick. She had this very 80s look to it, and it evolved a little bit more into the Scrungy Squad. And then, she just, she actually used that pandemic just to involve her character and to something, so powerful that when wrestling came back, she just blew up. And I mean, now she's like, I think she's doing pop music and she's a pop star. She's, it's just crazy progression. That's only in a couple of years. It doesn't take, 10 years now to get noticed. It takes maybe just a couple.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, there are so many guys that I know are just on the cusp of getting to the big time. And yeah, actually, on a side note, my son is actually friends with one half of Waves and Curls. So
Awesome.
yeah, so it's natural. And I'll put it this way: how much I love wrestling. Both of my children are named after wrestlers.
That's great.
Okay. My older daughter, she's named China for obvious reasons. Because yeah, I named her after someone who was a rule breaker, a groundbreaker. She was a first in a lot of things. So I knew that China was going to be her name. And my son has actually two wrestlers for names. Shawn Matthew.
Oh.
Shawn for Shawn Michaels, because I have been in love with that man since I was 13 years old. I finally got a chance to meet him a couple of years ago. It was an absolute dream to meet him. And I actually have a picture of him with my son. So my son got to meet his namesake, and his middle name Matthew for Matt Hardy. Also met. So
That's so cool though. And and I mean, like I said, wrestling, it's not just, people take it as something, a lot of people take it as, something light, funny, or whatever, but it's just as popular as any other major sport. And the diehard fans treat it, just as sacred. Their heroes are their heroes, the people they grew up with on TV, and regardless, that's who we always fell in love with, and it's what changed us. The people that kind of, molded us that, you would take bits and pieces of, even if, and you probably did it, even when you were doing the podcasting and stuff, you would think of, old segments and stuff and kind of draw from that and just, be inspired by, what inspired you to even get into the industry, and do it all. But, so you did the podcast, and then I'm taking it, you closed the doors on it?
yeah, after about 5 years, I would have to say life got in the way. It just got to the point where I think we went as far as we could with it, and we knew that it was time to kind of move on from it. And I'm actually kind of glad I did, because it's almost, I feel like the market is like a bit oversaturated now, because it seems like almost every other person has a podcast one way or another. I mean, you've got like Chris Jericho, Steve Austin, Matt Hardy, Carmella and Corey Graves, I think, also have a podcast. And then I just felt like, it was just time. And I think I actually stopped it at a good time, because like I said, I was afraid I was going to get swallowed up by all the other podcasts that were coming out there. So yeah, it was a good run. We had a good run with it, but yeah, it was time to shut the doors on it and kind of move on. But I'd still keep in touch with wrestling, and I still, I'm still involved with it. I still go to shows, and I still talk to lots of friends, lots of fans about wrestling. And I recently had the honor of getting a ticket of going to WWE Tribute to the Troops. As
Oh,
a
wow.
Yep, as a veteran, it was even I always watched Tribute to the Troops on WWE before, and I didn't think I'd be able to experience it. But when I got my free ticket, I just could not believe I was actually going to be at a tribute to the troops. And let me tell you, the emotions that were running that night, for me, it was just I was absolutely blown away, and I was honored to be a part of it. And I'm so happy that I got to experience it. But but I will never stop being a wrestling fan. I love wrestling, independent, major, doesn't matter. I will be there when I can, because I don't have a car, so I can't go everywhere. But any show that I can get to, I will be there.
That's great, that's kind of one of the things that I kind of, thought about when I decided to run, a podcast. I started, it's right around the pandemic. I want to say that, the world shut down and I started to see, wrestlers, just at a standstill. And it was sad because, these guys and girls were active every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, some of them working 3, 4 shows a week. And now they're just sitting home and you can tell they're getting depressed. And so, they're not, and obviously, it's financially kind of hurting too because, it's side money. If it, maybe it's not their full job, but, you can make decent side money with the merch and everything else, depending on your name and what you're doing. So, I started, buying merch through the pro wrestling t-shirt, just like, just kind of doing some things like that. I'd say, hey, you have a t-shirt, post your link, and I'd pick one just randomly and buy it, and fun little things like that. And prior to the pandemic, I wanted to do something with wrestling. I didn't know what it was going to be as far as a show. I had an idea of, again, going back to the commentary. I wanted to do commentary, but I didn't know how to get into a company or not. But a lot of wrestling games I noticed were doing, they were making complete rosters and running shows online, and it was starting to take off. They had fantasy leagues, and so I was maybe I'll start a fantasy league, and so that's where I came up with VSW, and I was like, I'm going to do this little thing, and I was making matches, just online and then commentating over them. I would cut, the game's commentary. But it all kind of shift changed in 2020, and I said, this isn't working, there's a bigger channel's getting swallowed up. But I want to do something again with wrestling. And my major inspiration was to get more eyes and ears on that indie scene. Again, because I was going to these shows, I was seeing the people, some of them that you were even talking about, and you were seeing these guys and girls, they're giving their hearts out, but they weren't getting the eyes and ears that they necessarily deserved. Whether, they weren't getting broadcast on IWTV or they weren't, nationally televised. So, they're not getting millions of, views. They're not getting thousands. They're getting, the local audience and who's talking about it. So I'm like, instead of getting swallowed up by everybody with WWE and AEW, let me just focus on some of this local stuff that's going on. And that's what I did. I just started following, a few local brands. I started off with NCW out in Dedham, and they've been around for 20-some years. A lot of great people have come and gone out of there, and it's fun wrestling, fun family style wrestling. And then I got into other promotions from there. My friend was like, "Gotta check out Beyond #1." I went to Beyond, and I fell in love with it. That's when I really fell in love, I think, with indie wrestling. When I went to Beyond. I saw Orange Cassidy, Chris Statlander, they were all out there and they were meeting people. You're seeing these TV stars, Anthony Green was there. All these guys and girls that are now have been made it to somewhere. And that's when I realized, like you kind of said, you did that kind of, a little bit earlier, that you were seeing people move. And it's like, now I was starting to see people move. And so I started, covering. I didn't have any interviews lined up, but I started covering what was shown. They were doing a lot of tapings at the end of 2020, the beginning of 21. They started doing a lot of indie tapings. Beyond did one, Limitless did The Road. NTW did one, Chaotic started doing one. So I would start covering those shows and do little recaps and previews and my own takes. And then I started reaching out to people and just said, hey, you want to come on and talk? And it kind of just spiraled out from there. And I still do it because I enjoy it. Does every, thing take off? No. It's not, I don't necessarily do it for myself a lot of times. A lot of times I enjoy doing it for, the people that come on to, promote their local show, what's happening next week, or where they're gonna be, or what's gonna happen. I love hearing their stories. I love hearing, all of that. So that's kind of where I just, came in. And I run my show, 100% kayfabe. I love to just keep that alive. I don't need to know, too many personal details because that's not the world I see. That's not what I go to see. I go to escape to see whatever world that isn't that, you know. But
Yeah, wrestling has always been a great escape.
it is, and even doing the podcasting, and even doing photography. I like to do photos too, from the fans, and videos and stuff. It's all a great just how it's a great hobby. It's a great something just it fills you, and it's hard to explain because there's everybody's got their own hobbies or things that just inspires them in life, and for some of us it's wrestling.
That's what I always say. I've never want to deny anyone their passion. Everyone's got that one thing they're passionate about. Some people are Potterheads. Some people are Lord of the Rings fans. Some people are Twihards. Everyone's got their thing. For me, like you, it's wrestling. I love wrestling. I always have loved wrestling. I always will love wrestling. And I'm proud to say that my children have gone on to love wrestling as well. My son has, like I said, he's friends with one half of Waves and Curls. He's gone to several events on his own. He's got some lucky photos with Seth Rollins, which is his current favorite right now. And so yeah, they are just, it's nice to see that the love of wrestling continues on. And I'm gonna continue supporting it, continue loving it. You'll see me at shows, one way or another. And it's just so much fun. And I don't see it dying down anytime soon. I don't see a lull period happening. Wrestling is hot. It always will be hot. And it's, got a lot of future up and coming stars coming out of it. So I'm
Most,
happy to
yes,
see it
most definitely.
the way it is.
It couldn't be honestly right now a better time for wrestling. I know, like I said, a lot of people and will say, Attitude Era, da da da. That was memorable. It was hypeful. But everything is relevant to its time. These were great at its time. If you were to bring it now to then, it wouldn't transcribe right over. People wouldn't even like it. I'm telling you, they would be offended on half of the stuff, and the other stuff would go over their heads. They wouldn't enjoy it. Everything was time period based. I can go back and enjoy it for enjoying it, but I have to remember the time period that it was shown in. Because wrestling, just like the real world, has evolved many times over, and what's deemed acceptable is no longer acceptable. What unacceptable, it changes back and forth. And everybody wants something a little edgier, but then they really don't. And I'm fine with wrestling just the way it is because you have so much out there that there is promotions dedicated to just death matches if that's your thing. There's promotions dedicated to just comedy core if that's your thing. There's New Japan style wrestling with his strong style it's dedicated to that. There's promotions that have everything. There's promotions that have just half. There's something out there for almost any kind of fan of wrestling to just go enjoy and not even worry about the other stuff.
Yeah, definitely. There's always something for everybody out there. So I highly encourage anyone if you want to get into wrestling, go out there, find your niche, find what you like, and I guarantee you'll find something you'll love for a very long time. Like I said, I've loved this since I was 10 years old. I'm not gonna say how old I am now, but I've loved it for decades, and it is without a doubt one of the best things I've ever had a passion for in a long time. So definitely check it out. And, I hope to, you know, continue to see it grow to be as awesome as it is.
Well, I do too, because like I said, it's been with me most of my life now, wrestling, and it's just something that continues to just grow and grow. But I thank you very much for taking the time coming on, talking your story. I wish I had, I didn't start listening to probably podcasts until like I started making one. I never really got into it because I don't know, I was just busy. But is there a way to go back and listen to your podcast? Are they up
I think
somewhere?
if you Google Square Circle Cafe podcast, the link will come up through the Apple Store. I had most of my podcasts, I did it through Blog Talk Radio, and a lot of them were uploaded to Apple Podcasts.
Okay.
So you could probably check out some stuff there, but I'm pretty sure you can Google it. And also, I have a YouTube channel that actually has, if you go back, I actually have some of my old matches on there.
Really?
Yeah, they're not stellar performances, but they were what they were for their times. So it's including the championship match where I won the title. So there's that. And so yeah, you'd be able to Google Square Circle Cafe podcasts and it should pop up. In fact, if I want, I could probably take a look, and if I do, I'll shoot you a link and you could say it. We have one review on there and it said that we're the worst show they've ever heard. So I don't know. So I guess I made it to have at least one review.
It was probably from Jim Cornette, so it's okay.
Probably, but I don't regret 1 second of it. I had fun doing it. I had a lot of great guests on it, and I'm very proud of what I did.
You should honestly think about maybe trying to start it up again. I know you think it's saturated, but those are the wrestlers doing it. It's always good to get different viewpoints. But like I said, you said, your time ran with it. But I do work people, that do want to get more content out there and bring more wrestlers and wrestling to, social media and platforms to do it, because it's another way of just showing support. It's another way of getting their names out there. But thank you for all you have done. I do, like I said, anybody that brings on people and takes the time to run a show, I appreciate it, because like I said, you're taking time out of your life to not just make your own show, but you're helping others. It is that form of help, because they're getting noticed, and if you have a good sized platform, that's even more noticed for them. But again, thank you very much for coming on. It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you at a local show.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And thank you everybody at home for watching. As always, we appreciate it. And support indie wrestling. Just go out there. If you can, grab a local ticket, check it out. You will not be disappointed. You never know, like she said, you never know who you're gonna see or what's gonna happen. A lot of crazy stuff goes on. Thank you everybody. Versace Stoner out.
Welcome to the Kill City.